This show is brought to you in part by viewers like you who joined the Patreon or become YouTube members. Thank you. And if you could, hit the like button and subscribe if you want more Browns-focused content. This offseason, I think, is going to be really interesting for the Cleveland Browns because I don't know what their philosophy going into it is going to be. The last few years have been pretty easy, right? Because the Browns invested a ton at quarterback. They invested in the idea that Deshaun Watson could be a franchise quarterback because that's what you traded for. And every move they made was to be as good as possible around that quarterback. That's what the Browns have been doing since they made the trade in 2022, right? They've been adding and adding and adding. But the reality of the Browns quarterback situation right now is dark. It's dark, okay? But the reality of the Browns quarterback situation is not that anymore, right? And before I break down like what the Browns' possible pathways could be and what that could possibly look like could be and what are the pros and cons of that, I really need to talk about and break down how we got here to begin with, because it can be difficult to forget what the thought process was that got us here. Because as much as people are complaining about where the Browns are at right now, the basic ideas that got us to this point are not bad ideas or ideas that we're going to like ignore going forward in the next rebuild. And what I mean by that is I'm not talking about anything specific about like, oh, trading for specifically Deshaun Watson. What I mean is in 2021, the Browns made the determination that maybe Baker Mayfield is an average to above average quarterback. But they did not believe that he was capable of becoming an elite quarterback. That was the determination that was made. I think the Browns looked at it simply like, hey, we don't want to become the Tennessee Titans. If you remember the Tennessee Titans at that time, they were a really good team with a really good core that could only get but so far because at the end of the day, their quarterback was Ryan Tannehill and they played in the AFC. And you got to get past an MVP candidate at quarterback to win the AFC. It's just what has to happen, right? Like, I know people are hyping up the Steelers right now with Russ. We'll see how far that goes. I don't know if it goes as far as some people are expecting, but you need to have that level of quarterback play to be able to compete on a consistent basis on a championship level with a team like Kansas City, with a team like Baltimore, with a team like Cincinnati when they're good, with the team, you know, with an elite quarterback, right? Justin Herbert, whoever you want to throw in there. There's a lot of quarterbacks in the AFC. So they made that determination, which I don't think is a wrong determination, even if you look at where Baker Mayfield is. Baker Mayfield, especially in Tampa Bay, has been average to above average. Still turns the ball over more than you would want a quarterback to turn the ball over. Still does things that drive you crazy, but still capable of those above average moments to great moments at quarterback, right? So that's where Baker Mayfield sits. They made the determination that wasn't enough at quarterback. They also made the determination that an elite quarterback was available. If you fast forward to 2024, we are trying to hope that the Browns get back to average at quarterback. The reason I bring this up and remind you guys how we got here and why I think that's important to having this conversation, and because the Watson trade was such a ginormous failure, because he could not even get you to average to slightly above average quarterback play, because it's such a embarrassing failure, there's going to be an urge for people to want to salvage the Deshaun Watson trade in any way, shape, or form. That could include sacrificing a lot of money in the future and a lot of draft picks in the future to get some win now assets in some kind of haphazard attempt to prop Deshaun Watson up as a starter for next year, that could be a use of those same assets, but not to prop up Deshaun Watson, but to go trade for somebody you feel like could provide a similar clock. Like let's say you do all that and you go after Trevor Lawrence or somebody like that, or Aaron Rodgers, or you trade for like Aaron Rodgers' contract, you trade for Kirk Cousins' contract or something like that. Like, basically, I don't want the Browns and I don't want Browns fans to feel so pressed about this Watson trade not working that we talk ourselves into some kind of move like that would try to aggressively keep the Browns in win now mode. I also don't advocate for the opposite, which is just purposely losing, trying to get the best draft position possible for the next couple of years, and basically trying to suck your way into a winning football team. I think that's a horrible strategy. It's never been shown to work. It's the most overrated football strategy to ever exist. And it hasn't built a single winning dynasty that it claims to create. Like, the whole tanking strategy, it's a bad strategy. The whole let's go ahead and go crazy in free agency, get a bunch of vets and just win 10 games, also a bad strategy, right? I've seen the Browns win 4 games following both of those strategies from 1999 and 2019. I've seen them do it, right? I've seen them lose a ton because they're trying to lose. I've seen them lose a ton because they're trying to win and they're trying to push shit together too fast. I hope the Browns this offseason can demonstrate that they have learned from their mistakes. No, you don't have to try to crash out in this offseason and make rush, panicky decisions to try to win 10 games next year. And in order to win 10 games next year, you don't have to do all of that. There is a world where the Browns make some smart decisions in free agency, some frugal but smart decisions in free agency. Those pan out. Draft well and win 10 games next year with who knows who at quarterback. It's a very strong possibility. It's not guaranteed, but 10 games is never guaranteed in the NFL, no matter how good your roster is, no matter how good your quarterback is. Look at the Bengals. They got the best quarterback in the NFL, according to statistics at least, in Joe Burrow. He ain't touching 10 games this year. So I hope the Browns don't come into this with a short-term strategy or another super long-term strategy. Don't come in here next year talking about no damn 5-year plan. Also, do not come in here signing 32-year-olds trying to win now again next year. Like, I'm not doing it, right? That you're going to have to rely on less flashy decision-making in the offseason. You're going to have to rely on drafting and developing well. You're going to have to rely on the unsexy things, building your offensive line. This is a perfect time to do it, right? Get some young guys, maybe take some flyers on some young free agents, right? But this is the time to build your offensive line, because if you build an offensive line this offseason, it's going to take a year to really get where you want it to. It is going to take another year to develop some of these guys you want to fill in the cracks. But by the end of that process, you will have a good offensive line if you do it right. And then once you have a good offensive line, that kind of lines up with when the draft is likely going to give you a lot of quarterbacks. That 2027 class could be filled with quarterbacks, right? That could be a class where you don't need the number 1 overall pick to get a franchise guy. And that's the kind of class that the Browns are going to need, because I don't think the Browns are going to be number 1 overall pick bad anytime soon. Basically, the Browns need to not force it. I think the Browns, the last couple of years, have been trying to manufacture more out the quarterback position than what's there. And when they can't get more than what's there, they got impatient and made a big move, and it blew up in their face. Let's not make that same mistake again. right? Let's use the resources that you have to address the quarterback position, but to address other positions too that this team also needs to have addressed. Maybe you don't do it all in 1 year, but you get it done eventually over the course of 2 years. And again, that doesn't mean that you have to stink for the years that you don't have everything that you need. Not every team that's good has everything that they need, but it also means that you don't rush. I really hope there is not that kind of energy in the building this offseason to where they feel the need to do something big to overcompensate for the fact that Deshaun Watson failed. Like that, I guess that's the word I'm looking for. I found it at the end of this video. I really hope the Browns don't overcompensate this offseason. I think you can use this offseason for what it is and produce a team next year that could be really young, really talented, with a lot of upside, and still win games. And you don't got to put yourself in a bad situation or tie up your money more than it's already tied up. And then you can add on top of that with the 2026 draft, right? Maybe you find a quarterback in that draft class. Maybe you find a quarterback in this draft class. Maybe you have to wait till 2027. But I really just don't want the Browns to force it and overcompensate and try to go against the grain here. I want them to just play the game and play it well this offseason. So that was my way of working through it and having that conversation. And I think this is an important conversation to have because this offseason is going to be super important. And I think there's going to be a lot of different ideas amongst Browns fans, Browns podcasters, Browns media on what the Browns should do. And everybody going to get in these debates. People going to crash out over certain names that they have or certain draft players that they got locked in on. And we're going to do the whole thing, right? But at the end of the day, I just want to be in a position this offseason where I don't feel like the Browns are making moves to overcompensate for the failure of Deshaun Watson. I want to be in a spot to feel like the Browns aren't making moves to kind of get a win out of an unwinnable situation. Like, I just want to see them work free agency, work it well, work the draft, work it well, draft well, get some players I can be excited about, and then rinse, wash, repeat. Like, you do that for 2 years, by 2027, you'll have another team that's ready for a championship window. But if you want to rush it, if you want to force things, that's how you can start to create a domino effect that this franchise has had a very hard time recovering from. Say what you want about the Browns under Andrew Berry and Kevin Stefanski. The reality is, the objective reality is that the Browns in these 4 years, while still having some of the traits of the old Browns, right? You still get the bad seasons, still get the bad games versus Pittsburgh in Pittsburgh. Like, it doesn't feel completely different than it felt like from 99 to 19. But in the 4 years that Kevin Stefanski and Andrew Berry have been here, we have seen more winning, more playoff success than we had seen in the 20 years without them combined. That's an objective fact. So they're doing something better than what the Browns were doing before that. I hope they continue to add on top of that. And how they can add on top of that is by not doing what I have seen every GM from 99 to 2019 do, which is when they're in a situation like this, they overcompensate. I just hope they avoid overcompensating, because I don't think this team needs to overcompensate to be good next year. I don't think this team needs to overcompensate to be good in a couple of years. I don't think this team needs to overcompensate to have a championship window in a couple of years. They just got to make the smart decisions with the assets that they have, and they'll be fine. Because at the end of the day, this team still has a lot of talent on it. I know it's hard to feel that way when the team's a 3-win football team, but this garbage 3-win football team has still been able to beat two of the best teams in the AFC. Who knows? They could pull off an upset next week and somehow beat the Kansas City Chiefs. It wouldn't be the craziest thing in the world. But because that's how talented this team is, right? Like, think about a year like 2011 and think about the talent on that team and the talent on this team. This team is clearly more talented. They have had some failings, right? The epic failure in the bomb of Deshaun Watson has made this record be worse than it should be. But still, very talented team. Still a young team with a lot of young talent. You don't got to overcompensate, right? If you don't love Shedeur, don't draft him in the first round. If you don't love Shedeur, don't trade up for him in the first round. Don't overcompensate at quarterback just because you feel like you have to because Watson failed, right? If that quarterback is not there in this draft class, you don't got to do it. If that quarterback is not there in 2026, you don't got to do it. There's going to be a lot of pressure to overcompensate, especially at the quarterback position. You don't got to do it. You really don't got to do it. So that's kind of my thought that I was thinking after this game. Because I'm like the Browns the record is what it is, that I'm past the point of being angry because they lost the game at this point. They're a 3-win team. It's December. Their record is what it is. The Browns did not do the small things that they needed to do to win the game last week. That's been a story the whole damn season, right? Like, this is just one of those years where the small things ain't going our way, where the ball ain't bouncing our way. And then you add on top of that, we had some horrible quarterback play at the beginning of this year, and then we got better at quarterback play this year. But still, that comes with its own issues because Jameis Winston throws a lot of interceptions. It is what it is with this season. If the Browns were able to go into this season differently, especially with a different approach at quarterback, maybe this season looks a lot different. But it is what it is with what happened this year. I hope they don't lose sight of that, because I think it's going to be real easy to lose sight of that. But that's my thoughts. Let me know what you think in the comment section down below. Y'all have a great day. Have an even better night. Peace.